Good evening. Today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting of the University Heights City Planning Commission to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Brennan,
Here.
Mrs. Odom. Here. Ms. Ryder.
Yes.
Mr. Casey.
Here. Here.
All members are present. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes from December 3rd, 2022. Is there a motion?
Also moved.
Okay, motion to approve by Mr. Rychak. Is there a second? Okay, second by Mr. Rowe. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mayor Brennan,
Yes.
Mrs. Urban. Yes. Mr. Radke,
Yes.
Mr. Casey,
I'll abstain.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Rod.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Very good. Minutes are approved. We now move on to item 4, agenda item for recommendation, City Council. Item A, application from PEA Group, site plan approval for the construction of a new Chick-fil-A restaurant with drive-through at 14100 Cedar Road. I believe the applicant is present. before you approach, it may make sense for me to recognize Mr. McConville to go over some preliminary matter.
Thank you, Mayor, for the benefit of the applicant and members of the audience, as well as members of the planning commission. I want to walk through the procedure for tonight's hearing and also talk a little bit about the legal standard that planning commission members will be asked to consider. This is what is known under Ohio law as a quasi judicial hearing. And because it was a quasi judicial hearing, the procedure tonight is governed by Ohio Revised Code, section 250603. That code provision requires us to swear or affirm any person who wishes to offer testimony this evening. The order of tonight's presentation will be that the applicant may present their plan. We typically have interaction among the planning commission members with the applicant while they're planning. For purposes of clarity and just to add to the presentation. We will then ask anyone from the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application come forward. Following those who've spoken in favor, we will ask those who may be opposed to come forward to speak. And at some point, the floor will be closed for public comment and the matter will be turned over to the planning commission members for further dialogue with the applicant. The property at issue is located in a U9 zoning district. Our U9 zoning district indicates that the proposed use, which is a restaurant use with a drive-through, requires a special permit. And the provisions of U9 zoning indicate that that special permit is to be considered under Chapter 1274. So the Chapter 1274 standards apply. Those standards require that any variances under Chapter 1274 be granted by the Planning Commission, not our Board of Zoning Appeals. And that's why we have a procedure this evening that's more like our Board of Zoning Appeals hearings and less what like you are normally doing here at Planning Commission. There will be at least a few variances that will be needed tonight. I would defer to the building commissioner, but at a minimum, I believe the minimum lot size requirement of 3 acres will require a variance, as well as no, it wasn't parking.
Landscape.
It was landscape. It was the open space requirement under 1274 is 50%. I think the applicant chose 30% on their plan. I do want to briefly go over the legal standard that's enunciated in 1274 for a special use permit. 1274-01B states as follows. A special use permit for any use described in this section shall be applied for and shall be issued on the recommendation of the Planning Commission, subject to any reasonable conditions the Planning Commission may impose uniformly in similar circumstances for any permitted location after the applicant demonstrates to the Planning Commission by clear and convincing evidence that the provisions of this chapter will be met and that the special use will not impair surrounding property values or uses, vehicular parking and pedestrian or traffic conditions, lighting glare at night, noise pollution to others, or other applicable criteria in the planning and zoning code, and will not be otherwise contrary to the public safety and welfare. With that, Mayor, I will turn the floor back over to you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That said, then I would like to recognize the applicants. I've asked that you approach the podium, state your name and business address for the record, and you may proceed. Oh, do we need to swear her in? Yeah, let's start there.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good evening. Is this okay? My name is Leslie Pardo. I'm with PEA Group in at 1849 Pond Run in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And I'm also here with Sean Walker from Chick-fil-A and Richard Edelman from Goodman Real Estate. We also have the property owners present as well if you have questions for them. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you tonight on behalf of Chick-fil-A, representing the site plan application. We believe this is a great opportunity to redevelop the site. The features include a new building with modular brick, with horizontal and vertical articulation and bronze trim, covered drive-through canopies, an outdoor patio, new landscaping, and a dual drive-through for quick service. Chick-fil-A is family-owned and privately held. The local owner-operator typically comes from a variety of backgrounds and work experiences. Most Chick-fil-A franchise owners have only one restaurant. They live in the community and it's their sole source of income. So they are at the store whenever it's open, basically. All locations are closed on Sundays to allow team members a day off and time with family and friends. And partnership with local nonprofits to improve the lives of people in their communities who need help most. Charitable donations are focused on education, homelessness, and hunger in the communities they serve. So I'm open for any questions you may have regarding the site. I do have a quick question about 1274. Is that in the local zoning ordinance?
Yes, yes, it is.
When I looked that up the other day, it appeared that that was for housing and social services and not U9.
Well, the reference in the code indicates that any use in a U9 that is not a permitted use is subject to a special permit. And the provision, it's B in that section O2B indicates that a special permit may be issued if the planning commission makes the determination that the requirements of 1274 or other applicable section or other sections as applicable are met. Those other sections refer to medical marijuana dispensaries. The code doesn't anywhere else enumerate a legal standard for a special use permit. So in order for planning commission to have a legal standard to consider, they must look at 1274. And 1274, while it's labeled for houses of worship and social service uses, also has a catch-all provision in it. It's page 7, I believe, and it talks about any other use that's not otherwise authorized in the code. So as we look at U9, there is no place in U9 where a restaurant with a drive-through is authorized. If you were presenting an application that had just the restaurant without the drive-through, clearly U9 would apply. We wouldn't be conducting a quasi-judicial hearing. We would just be looking at your in a more informal manner. But because the U9 regulations specifically denote special permit, and we don't have any other place on the code that defines that term or enunciates that standard, and it refers to 1274. We're in 1274. So it's convoluted. Our board members are actually somewhat used to that analysis. It's a code provision that dates back to 1983.
And as Mr. McDonald said, it is a little convoluted, but all the same. Here we are, and you did basically make an opening statement and you agreed to submit questions. I do have one, which I'd like to start out with before I ask the other board members if they would like to ask questions. You mentioned usually the restaurant is a singular franchise owner. Has that been determined for this particular restaurant at this point?
It's typically not determined until it gets a little bit farther along in the process. So I would think that
So there's nobody here this evening who is the franchise owner who should be here.
no, it's typically because they usually have another job and they would actually have to quit that job to become the franchise owner operator. They typically are not selected until farther on in the process.
Are there any board members who have a question at this point? Things are Carol.
Mayor,
Yes.
I was hoping maybe we could hear from the community, maybe they have something that I didn't consider before I ask questions or give insight. Is that possible?
That would be out of order at this point. We'll go to the community and take public comment, as Mr. McConnell indicated. several representatives of the applicant. We also have our own directors and chiefs who have reviewed the plan and may have some statements. We've got, for the record, their memos up here. We should go through all that. But if you have questions for Ms. Arcaro now.
I have lots of questions, but my questions would be determined after I hear from the community. So I'll make a motion to hear from the community next.
I'm gonna roll that out of order. We have an order here that the law director has set forward.
There's a motion on the floor.
And I'm not recognizing it. It's out of order. The community will be heard this evening, but we're gonna take this in the order that was set forth by the law.
Well, what I would suggest is we turn that question over to the applicant. I mean, if you have additional information to present or specific aspects of your site plan that you want to talk about, now would be the time to do it. Planning Commission does get the floor back at the end, so they can ask questions at that time. If they're not inclined to do so now. I just don't want to cut the applicant off if there's additional information you want to present. If you're willing to close your presentation, we'll open it up for public comment, and then the board will be able to close the floor at some point and ask additional questions of you. You can make rebuttal or answer questions if necessary. It's up to you.
Okay, well, I guess just to clarify, we did receive some comments back from the city. We have addressed all of those and returned them to the city. So there were some recommendations as far as adding a pedestrian walkway, some minor things as far as signage and that sort of thing. So those were addressed. So we have assured that there is pedestrian and bicycle access from the roadway along the service drive up to the Chick-fil-A, and we're providing bicycle parking as well. So those were modifications that we made. I would say that the landscaping is definitely much better than what you see out there currently. So we think that's a big improvement from what's out there. Really don't have a lot of, I mean, you've seen the plans, so unless you have questions, you know.
Do any of the board members have any questions they want to ask at this time? Noting also that, as Mr. McConville indicated, further questions could be had later after the conference. That's had their opportunity. Okay. Well, in reference to the feedback that you received from the city administratively, perhaps this would be a good time then for me to recognize some of our city officials who have worked on this administratively with you. Mr. Garcia.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
You know, because we have so many people here tonight, we want to move this along. I'm just going to ask anyone out there who thinks they are going to comment or may want to comment. Let's just administer one oath, and I would ask you to take the oath, and then we'll note for the record that everyone's been sworn. So for anyone who may want to speak or knows they're going to speak, you could raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. We'll note for the record that the vote and the directors have been sworn.
Very good. Yeah, Mr. Garcia, do you have any comments? I know you distributed a letter dated February 10, 2023, that you reviewed the plans. I'm sorry, I'm looking at. Mr. Garcia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. We had an initial meeting with the applicant, interviewed the documents preliminarily, and you know, she's understanding that after planning commission approval, then the drawings would be then sent out for plan review for review and comment. And that in the event that the board had any issues, they would bring them up at that time, and it would be the applicant's decision to come into compliance with those terms. And essentially, at this point, this is where we are at the planning commission stage, and waiting their approval so that, you know, the building department can receive the drawings submitted once we apply for via an application.
Mr. Garcia, could you speak into the microphone? More closely?
And then the permit would be, or the application would be, submitted for review and, processed. And that's, those were, discussed, those were discussions on all the meetings prior. And that's, into that, I'll defer to the, city safety services and the city's engineer, for their reports of compliance, prior to, issuance of, permit and course approval from the board.
Understood.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. You referenced the city engineer and the safety services. It may make sense now to recognize our city engineer, Mr. Chin. And if you could approach so that you can use the microphone for the benefit of the recording. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We received a full set of plans for the site plan. We had a review letter that was submitted back to the applicant on February 21st. It had 25 items on it that needed to be resolved. They diligently worked on that and they responded on February 28th with comments that are satisfactory to our office. There are a couple of things, obviously, that are that they can't answer right now because they don't have clean water approval yet. They don't have a couple of things that are out of their control. All the other details have been worked out, and we recommend approval of the site. It meets all of our code for engineering items.
Okay, very good.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Rob.
can I ask questions of the?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay, Mr. Cheney, you mentioned in your letter here, that you're the tying in of a 15-inch storm sewer into a 12-inch storm sewer. And you had some concern about that. What was the concern exactly?
The size, big one going into a smaller one, but it was answered satisfactorily.
Oh, so I don't have the answer. What was the answer?
Look it up.
Yes,
If you
please.
would
Thank
like.
you.
What comment number was that? Calculations were added to show that the 12-inch had the same capacity as a 15-inch. As sewers go, it depends on the slope, right? If the slope is steeper on the sewer, it could have more capacity than a bigger sewer. So when the 15-inch was coming in very flat, it hit a 12-inch, and they provided the calculations that showed that it has the capacity.
Okay, so you're of the opinion that tying in a 15-inch storm sewer into a 12-inch storm sewer won't have any.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the sake of the record, this appears to be page 3 of your letter, item 18. Yeah, okay. Any other questions, Mr. Cheney? Mr. Wright?
On the landscaping, Mayor said something earlier, are you doing the landscaping is within our requirement?
Well, they're adding plenty of green space on this, on the green site plan to show it. But you know, it's all pavement and buildings on. They're adding a lot of landscaping to the site.
They don't
Taking
need a
pavement
variance,
out.
they don't need a variance from us on the landscaping?
Well, I think that's more of a question for Mr. Conville.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
Or
Really,
Mr. Garcia.
It's a question for Mr. Garcia about my. 1274 applies, there's a 50% landscape requirement under 1274. I believe the site plan is showing a 30% landscape site.
I believe that would require 20% variance.
Can you put some images about that? I actually don't see landscaping on this site. I don't understand the landscaping. So could the applicant review that? For that?
Is there a page that you could reference or?
Set of plans and stuff.
Yes.
It would be sheet L, L100.
L for landscape. On the sheet, there should be trees, there should be plants, there should be grass. See. And not, I don't know about the coverage, as far as 50% or 30%. That wasn't for me to check, but there is landscaping.
If I could just confirm, with Mr. Garcia, my understanding is that this is a 30% coverage that we're seeing on page L100. The, under a special use permit, we would have a 50%. If this were simply a U9 without a special permit, it would be 20%.
That's correct.
So basically, there's 50% more green space here and there would be needed if it were strictly a U9, but because there's a special use permit, it would be a 20% variance. It would be. Oh, thank you. Is there anything else for Mr. Cheney at this time?
An additional report, Mayor?
No, please, you may have seen.
Kevin Westbrook is a PTOE, a professional traffic operations engineer, employed by GPD. When he reviewed the traffic study that was submitted by the applicant, he had some comments, which again, they took care of and resubmitted the traffic study. The chief also, the police chief, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he'll come up here. He also had one concern. We are recommending approval of the traffic study based on our expertise and knowledge of traffic. They're doing a really good thing, which is, you know, the drive-through for the bank right now, the bank has a drive-through, lets out right there in the light. And they're moving that driveway over 100 feet to the south, getting it away from the congestion of the light. It's a very good thing. We probably would have asked for it if they didn't do it themselves, but they did. And we're recommending approval of that traffic.
And just make sure I understand and have it for the record. There's currently a drive-through at this site for the bank.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. At the end of my report, other question.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mr. Junior? All right, very good. Well, you referenced Chief Rogers, so Chief Rogers. You come up, please. You have more than anything you care to add.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll reference a memo dated February 22nd, 2023 that was shared with commission's clerk and other members of the city administration. And in that memo, I identified 3 areas of concern specific to the traffic impact study that was provided. 2 of those issues were already resolved. They were specific to LOS values and some errors. Some of the numbers and letters correlation.
Oh, yes, if that would help.
Okay, so there was 3 items that I identified as concern in my February 22nd memo. That was also shared with other members of the city administration. And the first 2 items were specific to level of service values, specific to the traffic impact study. For the city engineer's office, that has already been resolved in their final traffic study report. It was more of a data entry issue. The final item that I have of concern would be specific to stackable space for traffic in the drive-through. And looking at other Chick-fil-A's in the area, specifically in Mayfield Heights and Macedonia, the proposed plan provides for more than the space that those 2 have, and it appears to be more than adequate. The concern would be in the occasion or the occurrence where the stackable traffic became backed up and then started stacking on the University Square Drive, that would have an impact on the traffic in that area. So there would obviously need to be some type of contingency plan that we'd have to work out with representatives of Chick-fil-A and subsequent processes. One recommendation would be to close off, when that does occur, to close off the south entrance and to make all traffic enter on the north entrance so that the stacked traffic for the drive-through could then be within the parking lot. Or if this became a reoccurring issue, you'd have to identify more of a permanent solution. And other than those 3 components that are brought up, then will be addressed. I have no other concerns at this time.
Okay, so when you say that, assuming that those things are then resolved, you have a recommendation with regard to the site plan?
I would recommend approval.
Okay. Any questions of Chief Rogers? Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Chief Kurzel.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commission. February tenth, our Fire Prevention Bureau submitted a memo to the building commissioner, making a couple of recommendations. One of them being completion of our site plan checklist. That was completed and fulfilled. Therefore, we're recommending approval to proceed.
So the concerns that you had have been met
Yes,
and you recommend approval.
yes.
Are there any questions for Chief Kurzel? Yeah, okay. Mr. Rowe.
And you have in your, report here about the fire truck turning radius. I noticed on the site plan that the truck, this would be for the semi truck for deliveries. I don't know if it's bigger or smaller than your Quint truck, but I noticed on the plan it goes over the curves when it makes its turning radius, its turn to the parking lot. Does the length of the Quint vehicle, how does it compare to one of these trucks shown in C201?
When we reviewed it, I believe we were looking at C203.
Okay, so that one too drives to get, that's your fire truck? That's the pumper. truck. That's not the Quint. If you need to get the ladder truck in there,
It is the ladder truck.
it says here pumper fire truck, so that's the ladder.
That might be, we did after we sent you a new one, right?
Yeah, and that was in reference to our checklist, which has the ladder truck being that it's the longest.
Okay, so I don't have a drawing with the ladder truck, but with the pumper truck, it drives over every curve in the parking lot. So the Quint's bigger, correct?
That's correct.
So
Are you looking at C203?
I'm at 203, yeah.
Can I clarify?
Yeah,
So what often looks like they're driving over the curb, there's actually the concrete that's part of the curb. So that's actually what may be hit. So we're really careful to make sure that when we're doing that when we don't have an issue with that actually driving over the curb. So it may look like it's actually driving over the, but it's actually the curb approach.
okay, but did you do a drawing for the ladder truck?
Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
So sorry, these were resubmitted on the 20.
Wait, that one's the what? Almost as long as it's that.
It's actually driving over the curb, it's just like going on the concrete. You know, so there's concrete and then the curb and then.
What about over here?
No, that's the actual, so that's not the.
Oh, it's like the
Yeah, like-
behind sticks out there.
Exactly.
Anything further, Chief Kurzel?
Over.
Okay, does anybody have any further question at this time for Chief Kurzel? Okay, thank you, Chief. I know there are several other, oh, sorry.
This is more of a comment. In terms of accessibility, given the amount of people that we have here, is there a way when we're looking at something, we can see it maybe on that screen directed toward the applicant? Is there, just because I'm betting that people in the audience wish they could have seen what Mr. Rock. Do we have a way of
Was that particular page one of the items that was printed? Kelly?
That was not in our report, no.
The print on the one that I have here is very tiny, but it appears to be the one that was in the most recent packet, which appears to be correct.
Attached to your site plan checklist?
Correct.
Mhm. And which page would it be in this packet? Just for the record.
It's attached to Chief Purple site plan checklist,
Yes.
and it's C 203.
Yes.
Which is the last page of the. And if anybody in the audience.
Very good. Thank you, John. This time. And thank you, Chief. Thank you. Ms. Arcaro, did you want to call either Chick-fil-A representative or the current ownership or anybody else at this time?
Happy to come up and answer any questions. I don't think we have any additional statements.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission wish to ask any questions of either Chick-fil-A's representative or of the representatives of the current ownership of the property? Yes.
I do have a question.
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, to the engineer. And this is just in regard to the sheet, E201, if we're talking about traffic. Okay. With sheet 203 getting revised, it looks like you're making all the photos on that. The sheet 201, when you circulate the, I'm assuming that's for the delivery truck. Does that need to hit curbs? Is that missing curb, or is that using the parking spaces to make it internal?
I should clarify, so the WB 62 trucks that make the large deliveries, those typically come at night as a drop delivery. So they'll come in the middle of the night and they'll take it out, they'll drop it inside the store and they'll leave. So they don't really need to worry about whether there's cars in the parking lot, because there shouldn't be any of that.
What time of those deliveries happen?
I think. Yeah, they're usually in the middle of the night, so definitely after hours, so like between 12 and 5, around there.
See everybody, can everybody please speak into your mics on Jen and the back of them.
If everyone please speak into the microphones, are you able to hear me when I speak into the microphone? Okay. Very good. If everyone would please, I know it seems like approaching into the microphone a little bit, but for the benefit of everybody here and for the recording and for the folks that are on Zoom, if you could please speak into the microphone. Thank you. Okay. I asked the commission again, do we have any questions at this time for the representative from Chick-fil-A or the current building owner? Anything further you want to present before we take comments from the public?
No, we just appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We will then switch off now to accepting comments from the public as suggested by Mr. Conville. We would take comments in support first. Is there anybody here from the public who would care to speak in support of the application? And if so, you may approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please speak into the microphone. Okay. Seeing none, we will now move to members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to the application. I saw a hand right there, so you may go first. Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you may proceed.
Can the back hear me like this? No, that's,
Is the microphone on?
oh, no. Oh, they're testing.
There we go.
Okay, great.
There we go.
So I am Dan Barish. I live at 4466 Baintree. I speak in opposition. I understand all the engineering concerns are being addressed, etc. But there is something more tonight, which is that this is one of those moments, oddly enough, where we have to decide what kind of community we really are. We are a community that has an anti-discrimination ordinance and further express whatever nobility we may have by putting a Canadian flag up. That's great. But then what do you really do when push comes to shove? And so here we are with this restaurant that is the third biggest fast food chain in the country, and which public is told stopped donating stunning amounts of money to anti-gay LGBTQ causes back in 2019. Interesting thing, though, that it is a privately owned chain. And that means that whatever money people put into those chicken sandwiches when they order their lunch, they're actually giving it to the CEO ultimately. It's not a shareholder-owned corporation. So interesting, I did some looking up just before I came here. And it's true, they have stopped their corporate donations to these abominable things. But in fact, the owner, Dan Cathy, who is a direct descendant, I believe, of the founder in 1967, founded, he has been, this billionaire has been one of the largest donors to a group called the National Christian Charitable Foundation, which put an immense amount of dark money lobbying efforts against the Equality Act, which passed the House of Representatives and then died in the Senate, unsurprisingly. And the Equality Act, well, the purpose was to make it illegal to discriminate against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in most settings, and have the support of more than 2/3 of Americans. So chicken is delicious. I love it, and some of the rest of you do as well. But we have to decide who we really are as a community. I am unqualified to comment on engineering matters, public safety, any of that. But I do know that we don't have to have hate in our community. And I do know that, yes, they stopped donating to terrible organizations in 2019, but you know, it's sort of like if you ask your kid, oh, you know, did you do thus and so? Well, no, but I just didn't, you know, when they lie by omission. Pretty much the same thing here. You don't get to be the third largest fast food chain in the country by putting your money you know not where. I have a very hard time imagining that Mr. Cathy took that money not knowing exactly what it was going to do. And so is that what we really want in our community? Aren't there any number of businesses that haven't done this? I don't accept this idea that in order to have commercial development, we have to let this into our community. And it's not a done deal. We don't have to give them these variances, and it's not Chick-fil-A or bust. That's all I know. So thank you for hearing me out.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the city?
Mike Meliscus, 2592 University Boulevard. I speak in opposition to the site plan. University Heights is a densely populated city with very little undeveloped land available to serve all smart community. Redevelopment should be taken with great care that the land is being used as efficiently and as beneficially as possible for all of us. For the proposed site plan, a huge portion of the site is being dedicated to parking spaces. Far more than any of the other drive-through restaurants in our city, and unreasonably many for the purpose stated. Parking spaces are the least useful application imaginable for unlimited available space. Studies show that the vast majority of parking spaces go unused as much as 80% of their service life. Parking spaces do not generate any value for the city or its residents and take up large amounts of space that could be better used for other applications. Simultaneously, abundant parking encourages car use instead of other more sustainable methods of transportation, which we're looking to encourage in the city. Also, drive-through restaurants cater to cars, bringing in clientele that do not participate in or contribute to our city other than pollution and congestion. I request the commission deny this variance for a site development plan that only detracts from our city and does nothing to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melissa. Is there anybody else who would care to address the city this evening? Yes, you don't have to be a resident to speak. If you are here for make public comments, you're a member of the public, whether you live in University Heights or elsewhere. So you may approach.
My name is Judy Schoenfeld. I live over on Miramar on the South Euclid side. And
Oh, could you speak in the microphone, please? You might want to remove it from
My name is Judy Schoenfeld and I live over on the South Euclid side. Just coming here, my friend and I were almost run over twice, just crossing Miramar. This is the most horrible intersection. There are accidents all the time. So now we're going to increase traffic with a drive-through restaurant and have more garbage coming to our side of Miramar. Miramar is a neighborhood street. I have all your buses coming down my street because they don't want to go to the intersection up at Warrensville because it's so bad. So they are constantly cutting through my neighborhood. They do not have children on those buses. I watch them all the time. And a lot of them don't understand what a stop sign is. You stop, you don't roll. Okay, so this is really going to be a big snafu for people who live on the other side of the street. And we couldn't even cross it at 6 o'clock or 6:45 at night. What's going to happen when all this other stuff, people are going to, work or on weekends? It's ridiculous. All the traffic that has started around. So we have your buses and we really don't want your restaurant and your garbage. And when they tore down May Company, I had rats in my yard for like 2 years. So I can hardly wait to see what's going to come when they tear down this building. So think about the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood. We don't need things that will just make it not a warm, wonderful place to live.
Thank you, Ms. Schoenfeld.
Hello, my name is Sean Belt, 2292 Canterbury Road. And I would like to speak in support of creativity. I don't believe that a fast food restaurant is the best use of this land, especially in our city where we have very few opportunities to redevelop or develop because we are so full already. When the mayor announced that Chick-fil-A was hoping to open in the city, that was the first that I heard that the current owner of that building was hoping to not have a building there anymore. And so if that building is not going to exist anymore, I would love for our city, for all of the really smart people that run our city to come together and use creativity to try to find a much better use for this lot. There are already a handful of things that I could think of, and I would love to speak to everyone about those things at a different time. But I think that we can do better than a fast food restaurant. Politics aside, because those have already been spoken eloquently about. I would love for this city to be more creative than we are being right now, entertaining Chick-fil-A moving into this.
Thank you, Mr. Belt.
Winifred Weiser, 2177 Jackson. Oh Lord, you don't need to write it down, Michael, you know where I live. I wasn't gonna say anything, but what I'm gonna say is this: I would hope the planning commission would uphold all of our codes. It's about time that we stand up and say what is going in. And it's just not a matter of, oh, they need this variance, or oh, they need that variance, or hey, we could take a 15-inch sewer, run it into a 12-inch sewer. That was fascinating. But I think it's time for people to actually begin to respect the codes that we have and to say we're going to adhere to them. So I would encourage the planning commission to really look hard at where this particular proposal may not meet our codes, and to stand up and say it doesn't meet the codes. We don't have to grant variances. We don't have to grant special use permits. And yes, I know people will say, we're gonna sue. Well, heck, the mayor wants to sue me all the time. So, I mean, I could run and hide. The reality is people always want to sue something. But maybe it's about time for the city to actually, people in the city to actually stand up, take the city back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massey.
Hello, my name is Bill Erdl, 2296 Miramar. Former city councilman and proud of my city, been here 65 years, third generation. And I think this is a horrible idea. Is this an economic development? Is that what's driving this? Is this like supposed to be economically good for our city? Why are we doing this? I can't imagine tearing down a building that big with all those people employed there and putting in a drive-through with a handful of kids getting $12 an hour. How does that make sense? Okay. Furthermore, my home is going to depreciate. You're going to get less tax from me. All right. The stench, the lights, the shitty, landscaping, all this was supposed to happen as we asked for in McDonald's. We got nothing. It's a stench hole over there. The landscaping is ridiculous when you drive by. The lights go on, they stay on forever. I'm sure that people living next door to that McDonald's really appreciate that. So I don't know, can anybody nod their head one way or another? Is this economic development that's driving this?
The applicant made an application.
Yeah.
The city did not recruit Chick-fil-A.
Okay, yeah, I understand it's privately owned.
And-
I get it.
Right, the city does not own the property. The city has not offered any incentives
Yeah, I
for
get it.
this applicant.
I get it. This group is supposed to put the brakes on stuff we don't like in this city. You're supposed to somehow keep this city as nice as it was. Not another drive-through. It's not a restaurant. Newsflash, it's not a restaurant. It's a drive-through. For 70%, am I right? 70% of your business comes through drive-through. I don't know, are you Chick-fil-A people? It's not, that's a no.
No.
Flash.
I mean, it was definitely higher during COVID. There was a lot more drive-through traffic and it's definitely evening back out. I think about 50%.
So traffic issues. I don't see any upside to this. So Miramar is in trouble. Yeah, I have a large home down the street from me that somebody okayed them building twice the size for some reason. I don't know how that happened to come through here. Did that come through here?
That went through ARB.
ARB. When do they meet?
And BZA.
The expansion of the home that I think you're speaking to was permitted as of right because the lot is 3 times the size of another lot. So it's the fact that many years ago, there was lot consolidation, the development on that property has been without variance.
All right, what else? I think that's about it. I do want to ask, will this issue eventually be voted on by council?
Yes, it will. This would be an approval.
That depends.
Well, okay, go ahead, Mr. McConnell.
If planning commission approves the application, then the site plan approval and any variances granted must also be approved by council. That's a provision in 1274. If the planning commission denies site plan application, the applicant has the right to appeal the denial to council. They have a 15-day period of time within which to make that election.
Okay, all right, I will. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Ms. Schoenfeld?
Yeah.
Sure, you can come back.
Yes.
You can get the microphone for please.
My question is, every Chick-fil-A I've ever seen has either been inside a building like a mall or in a huge commercial area, like on Richmond Road, where you're not infringing on anyone's homestead or their style of living. It's part of a big commercial enterprise. And so the traffic comes in and the traffic comes out, and it just doesn't really bother anybody because there's lots of traffic in there going to other stores. I know there's one on Mayfield. I've never been there. I'm sure that it's very busy, and it's also, I think, at Eastgate or something, isn't it? Which is
It's a Golden Gate.
Golden Gate, so it's another big enterprise with big, parking lot that people can come in and out of. We don't have that here. This is a small little space, really, when you think about all this out at Golden Gate and all this out on Richmond Road, wherever else they have Chick-fil-A. So I think that should be brought into your decisions in that, why are they coming to a small space like this in the middle of a neighborhood?
So just for clarification, it is adjacent to University Square.
Well, it's still not a shopping center like they have in Richmond, and it's not a shopping center like Eastgate. That's all.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there any other member of the public who would care to address the city? All right. We will close public comment at this time. I know that members of the commission may have further questions of the applicant or of Chick-fil-A or of the ownership, especially in light of public comment. Mr. Wright.
Will Chick-fil-A be participating pursuant to their company policies in discriminatory hiring practices?
I believe that Chick-fil-A will adhere to whatever local or state or federal guidelines are in place for anti-discrimination.
Anything further, Mr. Wright? Thank you, Ms. Arcaro. Mr. Rowe.
Okay, I have quite a few questions. My first question is actually for you, Brennan. When did you become familiar with this project on the University Heights?
I was initially made aware when Mr. Wasserstein called me his intention to work with Chick-fil-A with regard to redevelopment of his property, or the property of which he's part of the ownership group. It's not solely this property, nor is it in his name, and then Chick-fil-A into the city shortly there.
So about when?
I don't recall exactly the date, but it was in the last few weeks.
Okay, and when did the administration perform its administrative reviews?
Well, we did administrative review, once we had filing. When was the, Kelly, when did you receive the filing from Chick-fil-A?
Go pick it up.
I know there was some difficulty.
You had to go pick it up from UPS. Right? Was that 3 weeks ago?
Yeah,
About 3 weeks ago.
About 3 weeks?
About 3 weeks ago, I did go to UPS to pick up the plans. We had all for delivery.
And the reason I asked that question for benefit of the audience, I also serve on the city council. And I became aware of this project 24 hours before the public did, which to me is not satisfactory. I'm the chairperson of the Economic Development Committee. Typically, we hear of projects coming into the city well in advance from our economic development director. I was not made aware. I found out just like most of you last week. Question for the building commissioner. Have you performed a zoning review?
No, I've not fully, typically when plans come in, the plans are sent out for building review. And, I've not performed not a licensed zoning inspector. Plans examiner. Typically, the plans are submitted, once they're approved from council or from the planning commission, then they are submitted to, plans examiner for building review and issues.
Okay, but specifically to the zoning review, you did not perform one, correct?
I do not perform zoning reviews, correct?
Whose responsibility in this administration is it to perform a zoning review?
I do not have a zoning inspector in my disposal. Typically, if the zoning inspector review is required, it is sent out for review.
Would you be of the opinion that if a project is going to come before planning commission, it's the administration's role to inform the applicant and members of this commission whether this is zone conforming or not?
I'm sorry, repeat your question.
Would you be of the opinion that before scheduling a planning commission meeting, wouldn't a zoning review be necessary so that we understand if it is zone conforming at the time of this meeting?
Typically, a zoning that would make good sense, but in this scenario for this, all different municipalities operate differently. Typically here, since there is no zoning plan reviewer, plans are awaited to be approved by the commission and then sent out for review.
Okay, so you're an employee of Safeville, correct?
That's correct.
And does Safeville have a zoning reviewer on staff?
Yes, they do.
And we pay you across the board for all sorts of disciplines. How come no one on your staff in zoning review looked at this?
Those aren't typically sent out until the planning commission has approved.
But how can we approve something if we don't even know if it's zone conforming?
That's the purpose of the planning commission, to review the documents, to review the zoning, to review the approvals.
And this is where I'm going to disagree with you. I'm a member of this planning commission. I don't get paid to be on the planning commission. I get paid as a council member, but I don't get paid to be on the planning commission. Other people. I don't get paid to do a zoning review. That's your job. That is not our job. But I did a zoning review over the weekend, and I will pass it out for all of you to read. Okay, so, this was, I had to do this as quick as possible. I only had a few days to do the zoning review, but I'm a licensed architect. It's called in my purview of being able to have the qualifications to do a zoning review.
Would you go over those for the record? please?
I'm sorry, what?
Would you go over your qualifications?
I'm a licensed architect in the state of Ohio.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Okay, so U9 falls under 1266. The whole purpose of the U9 district falls under 1266.01 purpose. And it says here, and I'm only going to read the things on this list that are non-conforming or under general purpose. But the U9 district and its regulations are established in order to achieve, among others, the following purposes. Letter A. To permit and encourage a mixture of uses, including higher density residential, offices, limited retail, and civic uses in a manner which ensures the area is functionally competitive in today's housing and retail markets. My response to that is that this is a singular use, not a mixed use, but it is a singular use fast food drive-through restaurant. It does not encourage a mixture of uses, nor ensure the site being competitive in today's housing markets. Letter B, to provide increased opportunities for economic development while strengthening the diversity of uses found in the community. In my response, the city of University Heights has limited medical office space. This project reduces the diversity of uses and does not necessarily increase opportunity for economic development. And at this point in time, it is unclear on whether this will increase or decrease the income tax collection of the city. Letter C, to provide a pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use district that imparts a sense of identity and creates a unique place in the center of the community. My response, this project does not provide a pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use district. It does not impart a sense of identity. It is a fast food, auto-centric prototype that is found near highway interchanges. The proposed identity is the same as we see in any other city, so it is not unique. It does not create a unique place for the center of our community. It also restricts pedestrian connections from the surrounding streets and adjacent parking lots. Letter D, to establish design guidelines for new development or redevelopment to ensure that an aesthetically pleasing and pedestrian-friendly environment is created. Specifically, these guidelines are intended to, one, protect and preserve the appearance and character of the community. My response, a large national chain prototype building stamped throughout the country does not protect or preserve the appearance and unique character of communities. Two, reduce the impact between zoning districts. My response, this does not reduce the impact between zoning districts. This project abuts a U4 residential district across Miramar. It is also adjacent to senior living apartment building, just south of it. With well over 100 cars entering the drive-through per hour, there is a potential for long lines of idling cars. Headlamps, noise, exhaust, etc. of idling vehicles will negatively impact the surrounding area and environment. Number three, provide interest along the streetscape. This does not provide interest along the streetscape. Since the site is wrapped with a double lane drive-through, you will see cars idling all day long in the opposite direction of travel along Miramar and Cedar. This company has the busiest drive-throughs among the top 10 fast food chains and has the longest wait times in the industry. Additionally, as presented, the drive-through window faces Cedar Road, which to me is not acceptable. In fact, you'll see most drive-through restaurants do not face the street. They're usually on the side or back of the building. Letter E, promote building additions and renovations in a manner consistent with the objective standards and design criteria of the district. This does not meet the design criteria of the district. I will go over that more specifically below as I continue on. Letter F, to ensure that development occurs in a unified manner in accordance with the approved development plan. My response, this plan departs from the objectives of the United District, and I will read further below. Now, with regard to use regulations, under letter A, this is for permitted uses, and my response is a restaurant without the drive-through facility. They are permitted in the United District. However, drive-up/drive-through windows, when associated with a use otherwise permitted in this district, require a special permit, which the law director had mentioned. Also in here, outdoor sales and displays, including outdoor dining, require a special permit. So at this point, there are two special permits that are going to be required for this project. Letter B, this talks about special permit, and we went over that, but in order for a use to be permitted as a special use in United District, when denoted with this letter S and P, is provided when the planning commission first makes the determination that the requirements in either 1274, which Mr. McConville had mentioned, or chapters 874 and 1284, which I looked, they're not applicable, have been met. And in my opinion, the requirements under this chapter, 1266, as well as 1274, which I have later in the packet, have not been met to make any reasonable determination. Also, with regard to use regulations, there are accessory uses. Signage is an accessory use. We have not seen a signage package yet, but I'm assuming the signage package will come later. Okay, thank you. Skip page 3. This is really the chart that tells you what's applicable in this district, what's permitted and what requires special use permit. I already went over that. Page. Let's skip to page 6. Actually, I'm going to read above. I'm going to go to page 5. I can read the heading. Parking requirements and setbacks. I believe you do meet the parking requirements. Actually, you exceed it. The zone requires 52 spaces. Can I ask why you have 84 spaces when the zoning only requires 52?
We typically see that about that many spaces are required. We typically have about 15 employees on site at any given time, but most of the locations, we're seeing parking in that range.
So my question related to that is when I went and visited the one on Mayfield Road, they had 65 parking spaces and the one on Harbor Road had 39 parking spaces. So is this going to be twice as busy as the Harbor Road location?
I think based on the fact that you do have those other locations in close proximity, I don't think you're gonna see a huge uptick. I mean, this isn't a shiny new pen. This is a Chick-fil-A that you have in the community already. So I think you can expect pretty much the same amount of traffic.
Okay, so the Harbor Road location had 39 spaces. Why couldn't this have 39 spaces?
I'm not familiar with those other locations.
Okay, those are close. As part of the off-street parking, bicycle parking is required. You did mention you're putting bicycle parking in. I need to see the parking details to see if this really fits this particular item. However, I did notice under section 4 here, bicycle parking spaces located near the entrance of the use and served within the view of pedestrian traffic if possible and shall be sufficiently secure to reasonably reduce the likelihood of bicycle theft. And what I had found was your bicycle parking is on the other side of the building. It's not located near the entrance. And there's no windows there. So without a view from the interior,
There's there.
no, there wasn't. That was a spandrel glass that's not see-through. There's a bathroom there. Thank you. So anything that I feel deviates from the code, and we could talk about this amongst ourselves and with a lot of record, I feel requires a variance, so that would be the first variance required. The bicycle parking has to be located near the entrance the way you show it, since it deviates would require a variance. Skipping along to,
I'm sure we could find another.
I'm
location.
sure you could, that's a very easy fix. Page 7, under height regulations, this is one that is going to probably be hard to achieve with what you're showing. Section B, all buildings shall be designed to create the appearance of having a minimum of 2 stories through the use of architectural elements. My response to that is this building does not have the appearance of having a minimum of 2 stories. It is clearly a 1-story structure. So we need a variance for that. We will skip along to page 8. This is where there were a lot of things that do not comply. Under required design elements, note the word required. Letter A, each lot shall have a minimum of 65% of the linear length of the lot frontage abutting Cedar Road or Warrensville Center Road, in this case it's Cedar, devoted to a building or wall that is located within 30 feet of the public right of way. The building or wall shall comply with the following, and there's a list. But before I get to the list, I will give my input. This building does not have a minimum of 65% linear length of the lot frontage abutting Cedar devoted to a building or wall. To comply with this, you would need 143 linear feet of building or wall to be erected within 30 feet of the public right of way. You would need a variance for that non-compliance. What this is saying, and I had to read this like 10 times because it could be a little confusing. What this is saying, this is form-based zoning. Right next door is University Square, about Cedar Road, it's right up against the road. The idea behind the U9 district when this was formed is that buildings be built up against the road. So pedestrians walking by have a sense of place, creates interest along the street. So the building would have to be sited up against the road or a wall. The length of a lot frontage utilized in the calculation shall not include the width of the access drives. So your frontage along Cedar is 220 feet, so that's where I come up. Walls shall be constructed in solid masonry, shall have a height not less than 3 feet, not including ornamentation. Again, this doesn't comply because you're not up against Cedar Road. Buildings shall comply with the setback requirements. I feel it does not comply with 126608 letter B, which we just recently went over. Walls shall be located a minimum of 10 feet from the public right of way. This does not comply with the intent of 126609-A. Okay, then we get into your walls. So the walls of the building have to comply with the following. Number one. When the wall of the building faces a public right of way or parking area, or is within a 45 degree of facing the public right of way, a minimum of 50% of that wall on the ground floor shall have display type windows. The bottom edge of such window shall not be higher than 3 feet above grade, and a maximum of 20% of such windows may be okay. What this is saying is any wall that abuts a street, so you have Miramar, you have Cedar, or a parking area, so 3 of your walls abut, 50% of those walls have to be glass, and 20% of those windows can be opaque, but no more. And then you can't be above 3 feet. So in my analysis here on page 9, there are 3 walls that face a public right of way or parking area that do not conform to this item. The wall facing Miramar. There is not a minimum of 50% wall for glazing. All of the windows presented are higher than 3 feet above grade. It is unclear in the plans though, if maximum 20% of windows are opaque. So you would need a variance for that. And just so everyone understands, I'm going to pull up that elevation on here. Towards the back of your packet, letter A-302. This elevation here is the one facing Miramar. And you have some small windows here, so they're not above the 3 feet. I'm sorry, they're above the 3 feet requirement. You don't have the 50%. The kitchen's there. I understand what you were doing. That's where the kitchen is. But according to the code, if you're going to abut a major, any right of way, that has to be the 50% glazing. So you're going to have to correct that. The wall facing Cedar, that one is this picture here, bottom right-hand corner. Wall facing Cedar, there is not 50% wall area for glazing. This elevation does exceed the 20% maximum threshold for opaque glazing. So anything that's in the dark black here is opaque. So that exceeds that. So you will need a variance for that as well. The wall facing the parking area, and that is the other long elevation, the second one. There is not a minimum of 50% wall area for glazing. Some of the windows presented are higher than 3 feet above grade. So again, those things will either have to be updated for conformance or a variance would be required. Okay, number 2. Walls shall have no more than 20 feet of contiguous wall length devoid of windows on any ground floor unless the wall includes architectural features such as piers, columns, defined bays, or an undulation of the building at a pedestrian scale, rhythm, and visual interest is created. And what I found in the analysis here, the wall facing Miramar, There are large areas of wall expanse. Look at this top elevation. There are large areas of wall that exceeds the maximum of 20 feet of wall devoid of windows. And within those expanses, there are no architectural features shown. A variance would be required. Down to letter B, the wall faces of an area devoted solely to loading and delivery, and the wall is screened from view of all public rights of way, parking areas, and abutting residential streets. This wall, okay, so your deliveries happen on the south facade, but the way it's shown on the site plan, that wall is not screened from view from public rights of way on either Miramar or Cedar and the abutting U4 district. So again, anything that's in a residential district has to have that screening. So again, a variance would be required. Letter C, page 10. Letter D, all on-site utility and power lines shall be buried underground. We just need to see that on the drawings, so please mark that on your drawings and just come back. Down to, okay, next up is supplemental accessory use and accessory structure regulations. Page 10. Number 2, all walkways and parking facilities shall conform to the design requirements established by the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. From looking at your site plan, there is no clear pedestrian access from a public right of way to the front door. If you look at the site plan.
We revised that in our last.
Okay, I don't have that in my pack. Can you send me or send me a copy? So you have to cross over the drive-through exit then?
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of options. So, we didn't want someone crossing over this way, right in front of
Right.
it. So that was, we thought, the safest way away from the path. We give at least people enough chance to see someone and slow down.
Lighting, lighting was not included in the design packet for review, so we do need a lighting plan.
Photometric plan.
I think I have the photometric plan. What page? Oh, I'm sorry, see, no, that's reading.
E102.
E102? I don't think I have these.
It would have been after the landscape details.
No, but right into architectural.
That may have been added when we resubmitted.
Okay. Well, we will need to see that, if we can meet again. Page 11, I'm sorry, let me finish on page 10. Signs shall be provided according to the regulations set forth in 1270. The signage package was not included. You said you're going to provide that later. So that's fine. Okay, landscaping. This got brought up a couple times today. All portions of the site not devoted to a building or pavement shall be landscaped and screening shall be provided in order to remove, reduce, lessen, or absorb the impact between one use or zone and another. To reduce the impact of large parking areas, provide interest and lessen the monotony of the streetscape, and obscure the view of waste receptacles, parking areas, and loading areas. Through my evaluation, I have found this property is adjacent to a U4 residential district. So there's not enough landscaping provided to remove, reduce, lessen, or absorb the impact between the property and the adjacent U4 residential district. Not enough landscaping is provided to reduce the impact of large parking areas. So along Cedar, there will be more screening. Not enough landscaping is provided to lessen the monotony of the streetscape. Not enough landscaping is provided to obscure the parking areas and loading areas. Okay, number 2, under the same section, landscape areas having a width less than 10 feet, but not less than 5 feet. Oh, for this, I just need to see. You mentioned there's a 30% landscape coverage. In order for me to verify that, do you think you could provide a plan with like just do a polyline around all the landscape areas, call out the area and the overall area of the site so I can verify? So that would be You understand what I'm requesting, right?
Yes.
Okay, of course. So I can't verify that. I don't have that. Landscaping along the street frontage, we require in a U9 that one major shade tree for every 50 linear feet of lot frontage or fraction thereof, not including the drive entrances. Each tree at the time of the installation shall have a clear trunk height of at least 6 feet and minimum caliber of 2 inches. So now the frontage on Cedar, you're at 220 feet of frontage. You are showing 3 trees, one of them is an existing tree, but you're showing 2 new trees, but 5 are required. So if we're going to approve this as is, a variance would be required for that.
I'm sure we could comply with whatever
Thank you.
requirements.
The frontage on Miramar, only 1 tree was shown, 9 are required. Because that is 405 feet. We'll need 9 trees on that street. Number 2, on page 12, number 2, 1 shrub for every 10 linear feet of lot frontage or fraction thereof, not including the drive entrances. On frontage on Cedar, you're 220 feet. You show 16 shrubs, you need to have 22. So you can either update the plan or we have to approve a variance for that. The Miramar location, I believe, conforms. Screening of parking lots along public streets. We've talked about this. I do not believe that conforms. You can clearly see the parking lot from Cedar. Letter D, landscaping of the interior of the parking lots. I feel this does meet it, but I need to verify it. So once we have that other sheet, I can verify that. Number 4, down at the bottom, the interior parking lot landscape area shall be counted towards the minimum open space required in schedule 1264. But then I have to verify that with that Ito was telling you about. Letter E, screen adjacent to residential districts. Again, this abuts a U4 district, which is a residential district. So trees from 126611B note that I do have to place that. And once you place that criteria will be met. Let's go down to letter G, screen of loading areas. Loading areas shall be screened from view from public streets, parking areas, and adjacent lots by a wall or dense vegetative planting incorporating trees and or shrubs of a variety, which shall be equally effective in winter and summer, having a minimum height of 8 feet. The official, to me, and when I looked at this, the official loading area was unidentified on the site plan. Is it the back door? Is that where the deliveries come in?
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought. So on C201, there's also a note in the middle of the parking lot here. It says, what you mentioned earlier, drop deliveries are scheduled between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m. using a WB 62 truck. And I had to look up what that meant. It's a semi.
Right.
So what you can see on a freeway. I guess my question for either the building commissioner or somebody here at the city is that allowed to have deliveries between 12 and 5 in the city? I wasn't doing an extensive review, but I figured I'd ask.
It happens in other businesses all the time.
Not familiar with any codified ordinance that restricts that.
Okay, well, can you please double check that for me? But there is no adequate screening from Cedar because as your plan shows on 201, it looks like the truck would have to come in from the south entrance to like a 360. And I believe the most efficient way to do the deliveries is to be parallel with Cedar Road. So you would see the delivery truck during deliveries. Okay. Page 14, development and design guidelines. Under general criteria. The proposal shall enhance and improve the character of the community and be appropriate and compatible with its surroundings in accordance with the intent, objectives, and development requirements set forth in this chapter. In my opinion, this project is not enhancing or improving the character of the community. It's a single-use, drive-through, fast food facility that caters to automobile traffic. Number 2, buildings, structures, and landscapes should be designed and located on the site and be of a scale and massing to complement adjacent buildings and enhance the character of the surrounding buildings.
Mr. Rock, which page are you on now?
Page 14. And that was number 2. under buildings. My response is the scale and massing is non-conforming as the building appears to be 1 story, not 2. Also, the scale of the building footprint is minuscule compared to the size, length, and scale of the drive-through lanes. Number 3, buildings are encouraged to be placed near the street, which we talked about, to provide a sense of enclosure and definition to the street. This criteria nevertheless recognizes that the internal portion of the site will also be developed with new buildings or renovations and or additions to existing buildings. My response, while this project is near the street, it does not fulfill the 65% linear length of lot frontage abutting Cedar Road devoted to a building or wall within 30 feet of the public right of way. Additionally, I will note that if this building were to ever go out of business, this goes out of business, it's built as a fast food facility, so it's not something that you can just renovate and turn into another use. Number 4, each building or unit of a multiple building development should have its own distinct identity. Yet it also be compatible with adjacent units or buildings in terms of proportion, color, and materials. My response, this building is not in proportion to surrounding buildings in UH, which happen to be every building around this in the UH side are all 2 or more stories. The 2 elevations fronting the right of ways are the least architecturally developed and articulated. Additionally, there are 2 large canopies. You do not see them on the site plan. And I didn't even know about these canopies until I visited a Chick-fil-A. They're these huge canopies that look like toll booths. They each cover up to 6 cars. You have the order point canopy along Miramar, and you have the face-to-face drive-through canopy system along Cedar. Those are not compatible with the U9 design criteria. Okay, skipping ahead to page 15. Oh, and this is 31 pages, by the way. Number 6, pedestrian activity shall be encouraged and safe pedestrian connections shall be provided between the principal uses in the project area and between the principal uses, adjacent uses and sidewalks. In my opinion, this is not compliant. You did show me a revised plan, so let me take that into consideration. But pedestrian activity is limited here, really to just park your car near the front door. There is absolutely no pedestrian connection to adjacent uses or sidewalks. Further, a double lane automobile drive-through creates an unsafe condition for pedestrian traffic anyway. So even though we require pedestrians, even though the intent and the purpose of U9 is to promote pedestrian, I don't want to see pedestrians moving off the site because of the number of cars. So we already have a conflict here. The design of the buildings, number 1, architectural style is not restricted, but the evaluation of the project's appearance shall be based on the quality of its design relationships with prevailing design characteristics of the surrounding area. No, this does not meet the design criteria in 126609. Furthermore, the building does not have a front door facing either right. So we're looking at the back of the building in one elevation, and we're seeing the side of the building in the other elevation. Number 2, building components such as windows, doors, eaves, parapets shall be composed on a building facade so as to create a proportional and harmonious relationship with one another and surrounding buildings. My response, being a prototype structure designed for a highway interchange location, the design does not create a proportional and harmonious relationship with the surrounding buildings. Architectural features, number 3, should be placed upon a building facade so that a well-balanced pattern with constant rhythm and harmonious appearance results. No, this does not comply. See design criteria in 126609. Number 4, buildings and principal building entrances shall be oriented toward the street so as to define a street edge and contribute to a dynamic pedestrian and street environment. No, the front door faces the parking lot. It does not define a street edge. It does not contribute to a dynamic pedestrian and street environment. I feel this would require a variance. Page 16, number 6. Buildings located at street intersections and other important pedestrian or automobile entry points shall employ distinctive architectural features to distinguish those areas. No, my response, this does not engage. There's no glazing along the corner, and along both rights of ways, Miramar and Cedar, you are greeted with oversized vehicular canopies. I feel that would require variance in non-conformance. Under building materials, number 2, a combination of materials, textures, colors, and finishes are preferred to create visual interest. And this can be subjective, but it doesn't appear to have enough material, texture, and color varieties for visual interest. It's too monolithic looking. But and I have seen, there are other examples of other Chick-fil-A's throughout the country that have a more preferable. So if this were something we're serious about, we could take a look at some of the other ones around the country that may fit this better. Design of parking areas. Number 1, walkways should be provided in large parking areas and in parking areas that are associated with a high pedestrian volume, which shall be clearly distinguished and separated from the automobile. No, this does not conform. Although you showed me another plan, I need to take a better look at that. But there, at the time of this submission, there were no visible walkways in and around the parking lot, and there are no pedestrian entry points from outside the site. The only sidewalk from outside the site is on the south end, and that's being cut off at the senior apartments to make way for a double drive-through lane. The idea here, you being in a U9 district, the idea behind this is you park your car once and you can walk around. So you can park your car at Target. The way that facility was built, you can park your car once and walk into any of those box stores. Okay. The idea also is you can be able to access any of the accessory structures throughout U9 and park in your car once. I'm going to skip ahead to entry number 2, bottom of page 16. Entrances and exits to parking areas to be located so as to minimize traffic volumes in conflict with pedestrian residential streets, busy intersections. No, this does not allow for pedestrian access. There is no pedestrian access from Miramar. Not that I want pedestrian access. This is going to be a fast food place with a drive-through there. But again, the intent of U9 was to create harmonious pedestrian feel within the neighborhood. Under landscaping, I'm just going to skip ahead. What is shown on the plans does not promote a pedestrian environment. Pedestrian access is not separated from the vehicular access. This area does not strengthen vistas. An important axis between the development and other locations of U9. Number 2, trees and shrubs shall be arranged to create varied and attractive views. My opinion, not enough landscape is shown to obscure parking and drive-through areas. Number 3, plant materials to be provided in a variety of color displayed throughout the year. I would like to see if you do come back with a landscape plan to cut sheets of the plant material so I can confirm whether this complies. I will skip ahead to page 18. Circulation plan. This is number 2. The circulation plan shall show on-site vehicular and pedestrian circulation patterns, including the location and dimensions of proposed driveways and walkways, and the locations and arrangements of parking spaces and services. Traffic engineer may be retained by the city at the request of the planning commission to further review, comment, and provide recommendations to the city owner and developer. What I am saying here is that pedestrian circulation patterns are not included on the drawings. The only thing I see is you get out of your car and walk into the front door. Under construction plan, page 19, number 5, construction plan shall indicate the proposed method and standards for the construction and maintenance of utilities and paved areas. The construction plan, in my opinion, I don't see it here. It wasn't included in the drawings. Number 6, any proposed covenants running with the land deed, restrictions or easements proposed to be recorded and covenants proposed for maintenance. My question to you though, is there an easement to use that private drive next door, I guess to the west of the site? Do you have an easement for that?
As you enter,
Mm-hmm.
right, there's a process.
You have an easement. Okay, thank you. Schedule of construction, we did not receive that. And then all the way down to letter D under approval, the approval of the planning commission and or ARB shall be based on compliance with standards contained in the zoning code and with any supplementary criteria and guidelines that the planning commission and or ARB shall adopt from time to time. I feel this project as presented is not in compliance with the standards contained in the zoning code, see comments above. So that's 1266. You remember I said you also have to refer to 1274, and the law director reiterated that as well. So moving forward in the analysis, I also included 1274. Some things in here with regards to landscape are the same in 1274 as 1266, except for the amount of area. So I'll skip over some of the ones that repeat. But under intent, the intent and permitted use. Letter A, this chapter is established in order to permit under special circumstances and conditions uses which foster the most desirable use of the land in the city, which ensure compatibility and stability with existing and proposed adjacent uses and which harmonize and integrate into the existing zoning and the use plans, those special uses authorized under special permit recommended by the planning commission as approved by council and U1 for residential districts. My response is this project does not foster the most desirable use of the land as it is zoned mixed use. This is an auto-centric design. The plan is not compatible and stable with existing and proposed adjacent uses. And without the pedestrian component, which I had harped on, it does not harmonize and integrate into the existing zoning. Page 21. Letter D, special use permit for any use described in the section shall be applied for and shall be issued on the recommendation of the planning commission, subject to any reasonable conditions of the planning commission may impose. We can actually impose more things than what this code says. Just so everyone is understanding of that. May impose uniformly in similar circumstances for any permitted location after the applicant demonstrates to the planning commission clear and convincing evidence. The law director read the rest of this remarks. I felt that combination of the drive-throughs and the required pedestrian ways is actually contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare of the city. Again, you have over 100 cars an hour circulating through this site. I don't really want to see pedestrians coming from all over the place, which was the intent of U9. As presented, the departure from the U9 district zoning and design requirements will negatively impact the surrounding property values. And then most of the other stuff with regard to landscaping is repetitive. I'm gonna skip to page 25 here, but a special use permit may be issued by the planning commission for land fronting on other streets where the applicant demonstrates by clear and convincing evidence that the use will benefit and not impair surrounding property values or uses. Vehicular parking and pedestrian congestion or traffic conditions, noise pollution, and will not otherwise contrary to public policy and welfare subject to the approval of the majority of council. Though this does not conform, see the traffic study. We'll talk about the traffic study at the end of this report. Section about landscaping, again, that was repetitive, so we can skip that. But it does have to meet the requirements in this section. And everything else was repetitive from 1266. So those were my comments. On how I feel this doesn't mean so. And I didn't have to do this. This isn't my job. So to administration, to the building department, this is your responsibility. When we come to planning commission, we need to be armed with the information required to make decisions on whether this met the zoning ahead of time before we come here, and to make decisions on whether this is fit within the zoning. You are supposed to bring this information to us. We are not supposed to do the research. We're here to hear the applicant, to hear from your expertise, and to read your report that I made that clearly shows this does not meet the zoning. And in my opinion, if that had just been done, we would have saved a lot of time. I don't know why we're here today. It wasted my time, all of my colleagues' times, everybody in the community's time, and the applicants. Because what is designed doesn't work. And we could have saved so much energy if we had just told them, this is what you need to do to comply. What you need to do to comply is meet the criteria of 1266 and 1274 before we even consider a drive. So assuming you need no variances for the restaurant, and I counted anywhere between 12 and 14, a couple are questionable, but at least 12. Before we even consider the drive-through, all of this has to be met. And even if it did meet all of that, then in order to consider the drive-through, we have to consider everything in 1274. And then even if that's all met, that still doesn't guarantee that the city council will approve the demolition of the medical office building, which is a whole separate issue. So you have a lot of hurdles here ahead of you. You have to get the council on board with the demolition of an medical office building, the only freestanding medical office building in the city. And we have to meet the criteria of these two sections. Now, if you're serious about this and you want to come to University Heights to build your facility, we need to talk about traffic because that is a problem. I read through the 106-page traffic study by Fitchback. Don't worry, I won't be as winded this time, but I have a lot of concerns about this, and I'm going to you're on page 7 of the traffic study. Now I've given copy, but traffic study here, page 7. Okay, so this is existing conditions traffic analysis. So when you did the traffic, who did the traffic study? It was Fitchback, but you're not a representative Fitchback. So can you speak to this?
I'm not a traffic engineer. I might be able to answer some of the questions, but it was also reviewed by, and approved by your city's traffic engineer.
Okay. Yeah, that's going on already. Okay, thank you. So under the existing conditions traffic, one thing to note is that the westbound University Square traffic is graded a letter E on a scale of A, B, C, D, E, and F. The Warrensville Center Road and University Square driveway, the westbound turn movement operates at an E in the midday and PM peak hour. The University Square driveway minor street approach experiences delays resulting from the LOSE due to the limited green time provided for them. Therefore, no mitigation is recommended for the westbound University Square driveway approach. I'm not sure why no mitigation is required if it's graded E and highlighted, but that is certainly a question. The next section though is your section 3.0 background no build conditions analysis. What's the difference between the background conditions analysis and the existing conditions? I don't know either, but what it says here on page 9 is the LOS/delay. This is in the second paragraph below the big chart on page 9. The LOS/delay improved at the intersection of Warrensville Center Road and University Square driveway due to the assumption of within a 10-year span, the traffic signal will be modernized and will be configured as an actuated coordinated system instead of an actuated uncoordinated system. The intersection is configured as an actuated uncoordinated in the existing condition as discussed with the city. What this is saying is traffic is going to improve because we're assuming we're going to modernize the traffic lights. Well, I'm not aware of any traffic light modernization for this project. As far as I'm concerned, the traffic lights going to remain the same. So your whole study is anticipating that these lights will be improved.
The study also indicates no noticeable difference between existing and future based on the Chick-fil-A being in place.
Well, no, because it was actually evaluated between the base of the background conditions and the future, not the existing. So your analysis is based on we're going to upgrade our traffic lights. That's what it says in here. It was referring to the background, not the existing. Okay. On page 11, this is where I had a little bit of heartburn. Your trip generation. Fishback forecasts that the weekday, midday, and PM peak hour trips associated with the proposed development. The trip generation for Chick-fil-A was forecasted using driveway counts from AECom study at a Chick-fil-A in Walker, Michigan. Well, I looked up that location, it doesn't exist, never got built. It, well, show me on the map where it exists.
No, excuse me. Enough. Enough.
Okay,
My name is Sean Walker. I'm the principal development lead for Chick-fil-A. We have listened, we have heard. We have been here to partner with this community. We are excited still about being a part of this community. We are happy to address any concerns that you have in the correct setting. We did what we were supposed to do. We took the steps that we were told to take. This is an ambush and it's enough.
and
We
I,
will happily respond to all of these
thank you.
comments and be in partnership with you, but this is an ambush.
And I'll tell you something, I too was ambushed. As a planning commission member, please let me finish. As a planning commission member, it is the job of the administration, not your job either. I feel for you, I feel for you. You wasted your time
I
too.
appreciate that.
I feel for you. It is their job to tell us these things beforehand. It was their job to tell you in the administrative review that it doesn't meet zoning.
Correct, and you've made your points very, very clear.
Thank you.
I think we all can agree to that.
Okay,
But
but
this
you do
right
not have the
now,
floor and I do.
this
So-
right now is enough. I would ask you.
Ma'am, you
please
do not have the
allow her
floor.
to sit. Can you please allow her to sit? She's standing here. She's
said it.
listening to you. She's trying to respond to whatever she can.
Okay,
Okay, I just want to give her some relief.
the Walker, Michigan location does not exist. I looked it up. Just Google it. It's going to be built. Okay, it's not built yet. In fact, the site that you analyzed isn't even the site where they're going to build it. They're going to build it down the street and across the street at a Golden Corral that closed. So they're going to demolish the Golden Corral and put the location there. So what you're studying is not even applicable. It doesn't exist. Furthermore, the information used in this study, included in appendix 4, AECom AECom Chick-fil-A traffic impact study. This is the Alpine Avenue, Walker, Michigan location. That's what I talked about. The size of that Chick-fil-A in the study is 4,730 square feet, and the size of the proposed Chick-fil-A in the study is 5,240 square feet. The trips in the South Bend, Indiana Chick-fil-A were multiplied by 1.11 to be proportional to the 5,240 square foot development. Now, my argument with this is you have a building that was 4,730 square feet, and then you're going to have another building that's 5,240. And what the traffic engineer is saying here, because the building is 11% larger, it's going to have 11% more traffic. I have never in my experience knew that the size of the building dictates the traffic. It's the function of where you're going dictates the traffic. It's everything about the site that dictates the traffic, not the size of the building itself.
Mr. Rupp, may I have a moment?
Yes.
Thank you. Sean, I'm sorry, I missed your last.
Walker.
Walker, thank you. Chris Walker. It may, if I may, it may be all right if you would like to ask that the commission table this matter so that you can review the items that Mr. Rock has brought up among any other items you care to consider. And come back at another time.
Mayor, I do appreciate the comment and I will graciously accept.
I would note a couple things, Mayor. One is that, Mr. Rock is to be commended for his thorough review of the site plan. But if the planning commission is inclined to table that, I think what planning commission needs is a zoning review that comes from the building department. So Safeco needs to have their zoning folks provide a zoning review that details the overlay of 1274 onto the U9 zoning and sets forth any and all variances that may be required, including the size of those variances. And that information needs to be here not only with the planning commission members, but also with the applicant. The applicant has the opportunity to address whatever they deem appropriate to address.
And without mind, this, Mr. Garcia, would you see to that in the event that we table this application this time?
I will speak to that, Mayor.
Very good.
Okay, I'd like to continue with the traffic study though, because if you do come back, we need an updated traffic study.
I
approved
to table.
No, I actually, Mayor. If they are coming back, we need to have a traffic study that is comparable to what we were looking for, that fits the data that is relevant to today's standards. In this study, you referenced the,
Is there a second?
no. Okay.
All right, there's no second, Mr. Up. You may go ahead.
Okay, so in this study here, which uses a South Bend, Indiana location to derive the traffic counts, you have, you compared it to the benchmarks with,
Pardon me, correction. This is a traffic study hired by our professionals.
Yes.
We are not equipped to address those questions or defend what the analysis is before you.
so when you come back,
Happy to discuss that
Sure.
with you.
how about this? When you come back, what we would like to see is a traffic study that uses data that's local. This is data from a store in Indiana and a store that's not built. I'd like to see data with local, using local traffic. There are 78 locations in Ohio. 77 of the 78 are not located adjacent to a residential street. I know because I looked up every single one. Also, I would like to look at the traffic counts locally, because that's the market we're serving. I actually took it upon myself to go count cars at the nearby locations. On Saturday, I stopped by the Mayfield Road location. I set my timer, 60 minutes, counted cars coming in and out of the site. And in that 1 hour, I counted 209 cars. Of those 209 cars, hold on a second. Of those 209 cars, 132 of them used the drive-through. There was a question about what percentage of people use the drive-through, at least on a Saturday, and Mayfield on a given day that I was there during the peak hour, 63% used the drive-through. I imagine it's higher during the week because Saturday allows, there's more flexibility of families and people to sit down. That's just one location. So I also looked at the Harbor Road location. And during that peak hour, I sat there from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, set my timer for 60 minutes, counted cars, and that was on a Monday. You guys are closed on Sunday. There were 206 cars in that 60 minutes. So what's referencing here is that in Indiana, there was 150 cars. Now, just to put it in perspective, your study states that there were 36 cars that used Burger King across the street in the same amount of time during the peak hour. So now we're comparing 209 cars to 36. That's insane. So if this were to come back, what I would like to see in the traffic study, please talk to Fishback about this, got to use local data. Oh, also as well, the references here on the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They use an industry standard that the Indiana store, although smaller than this one, exceeds the industry standard. But that standard's 2 editions out of date. It's referencing the 9th edition of that standard, and it's on to the 11th edition. Now, I didn't look up the 11th edition because it was a couple $1,000s and I shouldn't have to buy it. But this traffic engineer probably has it. It was recently updated because we're now post-pandemic. And you're familiar with the industry, post-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, there was a rise in traffic at these local eateries and fast food locations. Additionally, since 2016, when this data was published for Indiana, there hasn't really been the DoorDash, the Uber Eats, the online ordering food delivery service. So what I would like to see if you come back is that the data be relevant to today's standards, taking all of that into account. One other thing I just want to mention is, and then I will stop, is the 22nd annual drive-through study by Insight in partnership with QSR. For 22 years, the annual drive-through study has been the leading industry benchmark for drive-through performance. And what it says here is that Chick-fil-A, in terms of total time in cars, by cars in line, that is taken into account the total wait time and the total service time. The average total time of vehicles do lead in the industry of 509 seconds. That's 8.5 minutes. That's without suggestive selling. I can only imagine how long it would be with suggestive selling. But without the suggestive selling, the average time in car in line is 8.5 minutes. And why I feel this is important to note is because we were hearing that there is precedent on this site because there's a drive-through for a bank. And I don't believe that is a precedent because a bank is a different use group. A bank is use group B for business. A fast food restaurant is use group A2, it's assembly. They're different use groups. To put it in perspective, there was 130 cars at the Mayfield Road drive-through on that day. I counted cars at the Huntington Bank site in which we want to do this between 12 and 1, which was their peak hour on Tuesday, and there were 23 cars. So there's 10 times more traffic at the fast food place than the bank that we're comparing this to, and we're calling this a precedent. I rest my case.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Walker, is there anything you care to say at this point?
I appreciate all the comments tonight. Thank everyone for your time. I appreciate Mr. Garcia and all the other members that have been very kind in working with us throughout this entire process. Our consultants, trusted partners, we've approached the city. We've always had the greatest intentions. We've always been upfront. We've laid out our plans. We stated our facts. Tonight, I heard a lot of opinions. I've heard a lot of comments. But aside from all of that, we do hire consultants because we trust our consultants to do the job that they're supposed to do. Okay, so now that we're hearing all of these comments, we will circle up with our trusted partners and figure out a game plan on how we can get back in front of you all. And again, we're laying everything out on the table, and that's the only thing we expect from you guys. Just let us know what's needed, and we'll do the absolute best that we can to work within the confines. Again, the information that we heard tonight, this is the first time that we've heard it. And so I do appreciate the comments. I just feel like we can really save a lot of people's time and have those appropriate discussions and figure that stuff out before we get here in a public setting. So I do apologize to everyone who's here, who had to spend a lot of their time this evening away from their families. I'll just conclude with that and just know that we're here to work with you all. And I hope you all can appreciate that. So thank you again for everything. And I look forward to reaching out to each of you and just figuring out the next steps. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Floor is open. Is there a motion?
Oh,
I made a motion table earlier, there wasn't a second.
so did you make one?
Well, that motion went away.
No, restate it and I'll second.
All right, well, I will then move table item A. Are you in a second, Mr. Rex? Okay, well, please say I second. Very good. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes. On the discussion of the motion to table, I feel that that's giving false hope because we don't even know at this point how many variances are required. Feel the application as presented should be rejected, allow you time to redo it. How it's situated on the site doesn't work. No design elements being and landscape and all that, so work out those details, see if you can make it meet the zoning. But it's gonna be a whole different application. So this application, I feel doesn't work. If this motion passes, great. If not, I'll make a motion to reject the application so you can do your work to redesign it. But it's gonna be a whole different design.
Okay, we already have a motion to table on the floor. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll on the motion to table.
Mayor Brennan,
Yes.
Mrs. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Radcheck,
Yes.
Mr. Casey.
Yeah.
Mr. Rock.
No,
Okay, the motion carries and the item is approved.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, so moved.
Second. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Radcheck, second by Mr. Rock. Mrs. Thomas, we call the.
Mayor Brennan.
Yes.
Mrs. Urban.
Yeah.
Mr. Radcheck.
Yeah.
Mr. Casey. Mr. Rock.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
didn't have to.